Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay tonight. This might be a late night. It depends on how I'm feeling, because I think I have another show that I want to do after this. I can never actually get all the shows that I want in. First, I want to thank everyone for your support of the channel. It is an immense help at this point. But if you do enjoy the content, please, feel free to help through Patreon, or for that matter, like the video, share the video. All that good stuff is appreciated. I would say though, trying to get off of YouTube, what I mean is trying to get off requiring like monetization from YouTube. Please feel free to help with $1 or more if you can help. So, a day or so ago, and it's in the news, the Democratic Party has put the kibosh-ish on superdelegates, and I want to talk about it. There were other changes. There are two main ones I want to talk about. One is superdelegates, and one is a little policy proposal that they have implemented that would allow the DNC head to essentially put the kibosh on anybody's campaign if they're not being sufficiently loyal to the Democratic Party. That's amazing. That doesn't even require an explanation. That doesn't require explanation. I am just going to leave that there, and I'm going to go to the superdelegates part, because that's the part I really want to get to. So let's read it out. This is CNN talking about it. Because I find this interesting, and I want to talk about overt and something that's not as overt, but is just as true, if not more so. DNC superdelegates changes superdelegates rules in presidential nomination process. Great. The move to limit the influence of superdelegates, and by the way, I don't want to have to go too much over this. You guys already know this at this point. Big nasty fight in 2016. Cheating that has taken place during the time frame. WikiLeaks releases the bombshell that wasn't a bombshell at all, because we were living through it, showing that they were cheating Bernie Sanders. And for whatever reason, the flash pin became the superdelegates. Meaning two main points, at least that Sanders was pushing. And I made videos on this early on, saying that I was going to use a certain standard by which to judge Sanders' influence on the Democratic Party on this. The reason I did that is because I didn't want myself later on changing the standard. I wanted the standard to be what the standard was. And my standard was, if they get rid of superdelegates, A, and B, if they open primaries. Those were the two main standards. I haven't forgotten the standards, because I was doing videos at the time where I created, when this came up. These were the two main items that Sanders was pushing on. Getting rid of superdelegates and opening primaries. Both of these were the bane of Bernie Sanders' existence. The primaries being closed in a direct way, keeping out certain people who wanted to get their hands on the ballot in order to make that vote for Bernie Sanders. Only Democrats need apply. And in places like New York, many of which were bled from even being able to vote, but many others were essentially not allowed to vote because you needed to be a Democrat months out to even be eligible to vote in the primaries. In other cases, keeping people out of the polling locations. So let's say Arizona will shut down polling locations in order to make these god-awful long lines and dissuade people from voting. Techniques that the Republican Party was using against Democrats was using against Sanders supporters. All the while, lying with open eyes and open mouths, saying that they weren't cheating. This is all fair play. How dare you say we're cheating, sir, etc., etc. That doesn't even go to the point of Clinton breaking FEC laws, or let's say skirting FEC regulations with money laundering, getting money back into the party apparatus, into her pocket, because she controlled the entirety of the party apparatus itself. She controlled the purse strings. At least that's what Donna Brazil said, the head of the Democratic Foundation, or Democratic National Committee, prior. So we know what happened. We know what happened. I don't want to do a major recap because I feel like that would add 10 minutes to the video. So let's just fast forward to now, and let's assume that everyone else is on board with where we are. So they move to limit superdelegates, supposedly. They move to limit the influence of superdelegates. That's the best way to put it. They move to limit the influence of superdelegates at the party's convention ahead of 2020 presidential primaries ended an emotional and tumultuous 2-year effort to born out of the divisive 2016 contest between Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who went on to become the Democratic nominee. Ended an emotional and tumultuous 2-year born out of the divisive. Okay, fair enough. In a surprisingly united vote, almost all members of the Democratic National Committee curtailed the ability of the superdelegates to vote on the first ballot for the primary's presidential nominee beginning with the next election. The group of about 700 automatic, unpledged party leaders, elected officials, and activists previously were able to back whichever candidate for the nomination they chose. The move ended a vehemently contested debate that had pitted the majority of the DNC members supporting the change against two former party chairs, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and others who opposed the new rules. Both sides came together to pass the overhaul process ahead of the next presidential campaign. Saturday's vote officially barred the superdelegates from voting on the first ballot to choose the party's presidential nominee unless a candidate has secured a majority of the convention using the only pledged delegates whose votes are earned during the primary process. Essentially, you have to get the vote. Beginning with the 2020 nomination process, candidates will no longer be able to count superdelegates if they want to win the party's nomination on the first ballot of voting at the convention. This makes it impossible for superdelegates to change the outcome of the pledged delegates' will, which has never occurred since the superdelegates were created in 1984 campaign. All right, that's the crux of it. That's the crux of it. That's what's been changed from the standpoint of superdelegates. Now, I look at that and I'm profoundly cynical at this. And I have something else in my head at the same time that I'm listening to this and looking at this. I'm seeing lefties chest thump. I'm seeing people on Twitter saying, yes! Yes! Look at what we've accomplished. And I've seen some other Democrats act as if this was some kind of bitter defeat. Donna Brazile, in a show of defiance, I suppose, tweeted out that they still have their seat at the table. Right here. I love this. I'm on Twitter. Oddly enough, Nomiki was close to Donna Brazile when she was working at TYT. And she was heavy in this camp of give Donna Brazile a chance. I thought Donna Brazile was essentially a political animal, a political hawk. And she was ultimately working for the Democratic Party. Now, she comes out with a tweet. Jesus Christ, Twitter's been weird. She comes out with a tweet saying essentially they still have influence in this process. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Twitter. They still have influence in the process, and they still have influence in the process. Tom Perez was essentially trying to cajole his members. Oh, here we go. Right here. Democrats voted to remove the automatic delegates from the first round of voting, but we still have seats at the table. We are still in the room and very much capable of sating the menu. Hashtag power rising. Fair enough. Fair enough. I looked at this and I just thought to myself, it does. Let me add this to it also. This is floating in my head at the same time I'm watching this.
Backfires. We've seen that on the Republican side some in the past, but right now the Republican National Committee is doing a lot better in terms of its fundraising, in terms of its coordination. The DNC is unpopular with its own base. Half of the Democratic Party, or roughly half the Democratic Party, felt like the DNC was unfairly tipping the scales in the last presidential election, trying to get Hillary Clinton nominated, trying to hurt Bernie Sanders. So you start with that bad blood. And really, there's just been a clash between these two sides that has resumed. The hostilities that had been put aside at the Democratic Convention in 2016 resumed the minute that Donald Trump was elected. This huge battle for the soul of the Democratic Party between the Clinton-type folks and the Sanders folks. And Tom Perez is in the middle of that, and he's gotten very explicit instructions from President Clinton, as we write in the paperback extension of the original book. He's gotten instructions from Bill Clinton not to let the party go to the Bernie Sanders folks. That off.
This is the guy that wrote the book Shattered. That book Shattered was awesome, by the way. I recommend it to anybody that wants to know anything about the last campaign, seeing Hillary Clinton campaign fall apart, and then within a few days push this idea of Trump in Russia. It's an amazing book. So I got that in my head, that Tom Perez was given explicit instructions, the stalking course that was essentially added over top of Keith Ellison, who was a clear favorite. Tom Perez came out of the wilderness and was like a man who somebody put a flashbulb in his eyes, just kind of strolling about, and ends up getting the DNC lead. Is it possible that Tom Perez gave something without giving anything? That's what I want to know. That's the point. That's what I started thinking. Don't give them the DNC. So is it possible that they gave the DNC without giving anything about the DNC? There's something that's true. Do you remember in the fraud lawsuit, the DNC fraud lawsuit, Jared Beck? So Jared Beck amended the fraud lawsuit because the DNC came out and said that they were losing money. They sued WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin, something to that effect. They were trying to connect all of those things together in their lawsuit, and the case that they were made was that they were losing money. Look at all this money that we've lost ever since this lawsuit, revealing all of this stuff, and all of the stuff that took place because of this shows that we were damaged by this. Maybe they were. Now, the entire time they have been saying that, hey, you can't say that there was anything going on where people even cared from the standpoint of the Bernie Sanders supporters, while conversely making the opposite argument that people did care and that you could prove that they care by the loss of money that the DNC experienced after the 2016 election. They understood that millions of people fled their party, and in people fleeing their party, they also saw a loss of funding. They were hurting. So this party that to some degree recognized, oh my God, people are angry at us. What can we do to get these people from being angry at us? How do we wedge this? How do we solve this? How do we mend this? How do we fix this? And if possible, fix it in a way that doesn't fix anything. Can we give them what they perceive to be a win without, in fact, getting a win? One of the things that CNN adds here that I like that they add, believe it or not, is that this makes it impossible for superdelegates to change the outcome of the pledged delegates, which has never occurred since they were created in 1984. We've given them something that has never been used. I don't think that's unfair to say. We've given them something that no one has ever even used. All right? To put it in a nutshell, on the first ballot, if the person wins outright, then the superdelegates don't matter. Meaning, the influence of the superdelegates. But here's the catch. The superdelegates don't vote anyway until the delegate vote. The delegate vote, meaning that first vote, when the people make their vote and they end up at the place, and whoever wins, if one of the candidates gets 50.1%, that candidate wins. Sanders, Clinton are in a race. Sanders gets 51.1% of the vote. Superdelegates don't matter. The election is over. Sanders wins the primary. Same thing true for Clinton. Here's a catch. Superdelegates, however, have not gone anywhere. Superdelegates have not been less than 1 iota. Superdelegates still exist. This is the key point. People need to fully understand this. Superdelegates still exist. They haven't gone anywhere. The catch is, they're neutered. If the person is chosen in the first round. They are not neutered, however, if there's no plurality of the vote. Let's say Clinton, Sanders, and some other random person is in the election. Let's say that Sanders gets like 40% of the vote, Clinton gets a certain percent of the vote, and somebody else gets a certain percent of the vote. It goes to the next round. All of the superdelegates come back into play. And each and every one of those superdelegates can vote for whoever they want to vote for, meaning that just because Sanders might have had more votes in the first round doesn't mean he would win the election. But again, the first round has chosen the election, gone all the way back to God knows how long. Or is that true? Let's challenge the thought for the moment. Because I'm going to challenge and I'm going to make the argument that that's not true. At least that wasn't necessarily true for the last election. It's true that from a direct standpoint, the superdelegates never had to actually put their weight on the scale. That's true. It is not true that they haven't influenced the outcome of the election. Let me say two things. I think Tom Perez is giving something without giving anything. That's the first point. If the superdelegates haven't been used going back even to 1984 since their origin, then what are you really winning in this? From a standpoint of the left, the lefties are looking for a win. They want to win. They really want to win. And because they want to win and they want to be able to say, oh, look at what we got, they're running around with this as if this has been some dramatic episode. I haven't forgot there were two items. Opening the primaries. And again, no superdelegates have gone anywhere. If there's a second round, all of these superdelegates are back. All of them are back. The last point I want to make. Just because the superdelegates may not necessarily have voted, it doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't had an influence. Have you heard of this? We as human beings have an odd quirk about us. And it's not odd, nor is it a quirk, because I guess you can make a case that said nothing is odd or anything is a quirk. Everything is relative to what you know and who you are. But there's an aspect of us of social conformity. We like to think that the choices that we make are purely our own. When I get up in the morning and I decided to do X or I decided to do Y, that choice is purely coming from me. Same thing about we go about our affairs throughout the course of our day, throughout the course of our life. Nothing can be further from the truth. There's a certain degree of social conformity in the way that we go about our affairs. The way we look at how somebody is doing something in order to acclimate ourselves to whether or not something is right or something is wrong, and persisting that particular behavior as we go about our way. Same thing when we're looking at crowds. Same thing when we're in a group of other people. Some of the experiments that they did, they were able to find that when people were in a group with other people that shared their values, their belief system tended to harden. Meaning, the moment I start talking to people who are similar to me, my belief system hardens because I feel like the people around me are solidifying what I believe about the world to be right. Other people believe it, so it has to be right. I believed it first. These guys also believe it. God damn it, I knew I was right. Same thing is true whether you're talking about on the left or the right. There's a certain degree of social conformity in the way that we go about our affairs. There's another test that backs this up that goes all the way back to the 1940s, I believe, 40s or 50s, called the Solomon Asch. I can't show this video because they would flag my video with a copyright strike, because they've copyright striked my video once before when I've showed something like that. But in a nutshell, the test shows that people, even when they know they are right about something, will choose a wrong answer if the group chooses the wrong answer. They did this by asking the people which line is longest. It's kind of like the Star Trek episode. They kept asking Captain Picard, how many lights do you see? And after a while, Picard almost breaks down and lies because he's under torture. But even when you're not under torture, so that's maybe a wrong one. But say for the moment that instead of Picard being tortured, let's say there were 10 people in the room and they asked each person in the room, how many lights do you see? The guy who's not in on it, let's say he's the last guy, and everybody or 3 other people in the group has said the wrong answer, he may say the wrong answer. There was a large, significant percentage of people, when asked about it, in their case they used lines, which line is the longest, a large percentage, I think it was like 30 or 40% of the people in the experiment will lie. Not lie, but will give the wrong answer, when the rest of the group gives an erroneous answer. When talked to the person afterwards, the person just said, kind of, again, social conformity, well, I mean, these other people answered this way, so I assume that the people in the group knew something that I didn't know. The significance of them using the superdelegates. The superdelegates' influence on the race had to do with people knowing what they were going to choose in the beginning of the race. It made it look as if hundreds more people were associated with the Clinton camp, and there was no way possible that Bernie Sanders could ever catch up to the magnificent, monumental lead that Hillary Clinton had accrued. And those people hadn't even voted yet. Superdelegates don't vote until the end of the process, and the media was showing that number at every moment, at every instant, to get across into the American populace's consciousness that no need to vote. It doesn't matter. And if you do vote, you're going to lump yourself in with the winner, so you'll be more inclined, just based on social psychology, to vote for Clinton, especially if you're undecided and you're more so in the Democratic camp. The superdelegates did have an influence on the election. That's my point. It might have been indirect, but that indirect experience can be shown experimentally to be a certain significant percentage that moves the dial. And I present to you that they probably already know it. Not probably, they do already know it. That's why they do it. Again, but by the same token, do we believe that the media won't still use superdelegates? And I'll end it on this. Superdelegates weren't supposed to vote until after the regular delegates voted anyway. The votes weren't to be used until the very end of the process, meaning at the very end of the election cycle. Once they get to the convention, then they vote. But that doesn't really matter. The media goes and asks superdelegates, hey, who are you going to vote for? Do we believe that they just would modify the question? Who would you vote for if it goes to the second round? Who would you vote for if it goes to the second round? Do we believe that they wouldn't show that number on the screen and the cameras like they always did? My point in this is, if you really want to nix the impact of superdelegates, then you just get rid of superdelegates. You're rigging it to a certain degree less, and you're asking us to be proud of the fact that you're only willing to rig it a little less. I think that's nonsense. Why on earth would I give you a pat on the back for still cheating? Hey, you're cheating less! Good job for cheating less. What about the open primaries? What about the open primaries? You're not getting a pat on the back for doing something that's moderately, incrementally okay. Those superdelegates still exist, and it doesn't mean the Democratic strategy wouldn't change in order to edge out your candidate. Before you're patting them on the back, understand that the superdelegates still exist. So, this video has gone longer than I wanted, so I'm not going to, oh God, that's funny. Bait and switch, imagine our surprise. Yeah, people are excited about this. I don't understand the excitement. Are primaries going to be open primaries? That's what I want to know. I haven't moved my goalposts. Everyone else has moved their goalposts. Look back at the videos early on in the footage when they were talking about what they wanted to accomplish, and look at now. The Democratic Party and the people on the left who consider themselves on the left, talking about the JDs, the TYTs, they've moved the goalposts. They've moved the goalposts. If they got rid of superdelegates like they said they were, if they even got rid of superdelegates by 60% like they say they were, and they opened the primaries, you would have had me to some degree to give them, at the very least, good job. Yes, you've moved it. Grudgingly, I have to say this, but no, I don't have to do that at all, because ultimately the superdelegates still exist. And while you've constrained them to some degree in the first round, you never went to a second round anyway. Never went to a second round anyway. It's symbolic. It's symbolic. Now, the question is the media going to still turn around? Baltazar. In further news, Monsanto to get the gold medal for removing one ingredient from his Roundup, which causes cancer. Oh, by the way, are they still taking money? Are they still controlled by lobbyists? Huh? Is that true? Do they still have the capacity to shut polling locations? Like, come on, give me a break. Give me a break. You're not getting an applause for doing the most modest of shit. And Donna Brazile says, oh, they're taking our voice. They're taking our voice. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I mean, this one wasn't meant to be this long. It's gone much longer than I've wanted it to go. But, I mean, come on. Come on. This is not opening the polling locations. Meaning this is not putting a constraint, meaning where they can't just arbitrarily close polling locations. This is not making sure that lobbyists aren't buying our politicians. This is not making sure that they don't have superdelegates at all. You're telling me that we can rig it by a certain process, and I should be happy that you're rigging it a little bit less. Not so much. Oh, they've gotten rid of caucuses. There was that. Of course they're going to get rid of caucuses because they thought that they gave Bernie Sanders a better chance in the election. So yeah, they wanted to get rid of that. Yeah, this has been cut a particular way, and it's being sold by the left as some kind of win. It's sold by the left as some kind of win because the left wants to give this idea that it's winning. I'm not that easily amused. I'll say it that way. I'm not that easily amused. All right, I'm going to end this. I put the articles at the bottom so you can see it for yourself. I think the issue here has to do with whether or not this is a significant change in the process. And I don't know, I am unaware of anybody who would own up to this being a significant change in the process. Even CNN itself admits that this has never intruded itself in the process. Now, again, I put a caveat in that. I do think the perspective of it intrudes itself into the process. But do we believe that that perspective stops? They're still going to ask the secondary question of, if this election went to the second round, who would you choose? I don't know why they don't think people are going to ask that question. Meaning the superdelegates still exist as a specter over the race. No, they can't intrude into the race itself, but they haven't intruded going all the way back since their inception. But lefties are saying this is... this is a big thing. And by the way, the strategy that the party uses, they're acting as if that strategy can't change. Meaning, just because it hasn't been an issue going all the way back to the 80s or whatever, they keep saying that it doesn't necessarily mean it won't be an issue going forward, as you may get multiple people that force the stuff until second round. The politics of this may have just changed just by making this rule change. They don't necessarily mean that the rule set is always going to persist itself in the exact same way that the people have played this game. I hope that makes sense. That you've changed the rules of the game. It doesn't, doesn't necessarily mean that the players will play the game in exactly the same way. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. Garno, shell game strategy is DNC standard. They're always using the form of it or another. Donate to Sanders. Your cash goes to Hillary. One of many examples. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. All right. I will end this here. Like I said, the links are at the bottom. I may have one or two more that I want to do tonight. I'm going to go check on Mrs. Thomas. She's not feeling well. So I'll see you guys in a few. Thanks, guys. Oh, damn. You guys didn't get to see my image roll. I had an amazing screen save. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. That's from the other show. That's probably why you haven't seen my image roll, because this image roll is the wrong image roll. All right. If I do another video on Democrats, you guys will be able to see it then. It was pretty funny, though. It was a lot of interesting cartoons and everything else dealing with superdelegates. It was badass. All right, guys. You have a good one. See you soon.